Just a few nights ago, President Biden gave the State of the Union address. I tuned in to watch and see what he would mention about veterans or military issues in our country. I was only able to pick out a couple of things. An hour and a half of some incoherent mumbling, some incoherent slipping on his words, a lot of campaign speech, if you will. I always thought that the State of the Union address was meant for what's happening and what has happened, to talk about our successes and maybe even some things that aren't so great, and maybe how we plan to make those things better. It seemed like a lot of this was a campaign speech about what he's going to do better should he be reelected. But let's talk about a couple of the things that he mentioned as it pertains to our military and veterans. The first thing that he mentioned was that there are no and there will not be any soldiers, any sailors, any Marines, any airmen, and for sure no Coast Guard personnel in the country of Ukraine actively assisting in the fight against Russia. What he did say, however, is that we will continue to supply them with weapons, food, fuel, medical supplies, ammunition, equipment such as planes, tanks, and other vehicles. We'll continue to do that. He failed to mention also that there are United States soldiers all over the area, maybe not within the borders of the Ukraine. For example, we have soldiers in Poland. Poland shares a border with the Ukraine. But he's right. There aren't any American soldiers in the Ukraine, as far as we know. We all know that there's many secrets to be had. But as far as the regular guy, everyday American knows, there isn't any soldiers inside the border. He also talked about the southern border. And although the southern border is not an issue for veterans or military members, it's becoming that. Governors all over this country are sending their National Guard soldiers to the border to help extinguish the invasion that we see daily. People just walking across the border under barbed wire fences that just so happen to be broken just enough for people to just duck under and walk in, and seemingly be welcomed by Border Patrol agents and other government officials. But Mr. Biden pointed out that he has made great strides at the border to help with this issue. He won't call it an invasion, but I will. Many other people in this country will also call it an invasion. It wasn't very long after he made these comments that we saw this. This is a picture of the helicopter that crashed carrying 3 National Guard members and a Border Patrol agent that were patrolling the border to look for illegals crossing into the United States of America. And although it's true that accidents happen, who knows what kind of things were going on with that aircraft? Did the crew chief miss something in inspections? Did the pilot have an issue? Whatever. I guess that all remains to be seen. But the point is that if the federal government had been doing what they were supposed to do and letting the Border Patrol take the necessary steps to stop this invasion from happening, we wouldn't have had to have military aircraft patrolling the border. We wouldn't have to worry about our soldiers crashing at the border. So, in my opinion, that kind of makes it a military issue. President Biden also talked about the fact that he signed the PACT Act into law not too long ago. And while I'll say, on paper, the PACT Act is an amazing piece of legislation, has the potential to do a lot for veterans who have been exposed to toxic burn pits, tainted water, any of those issues that we've experienced in the last 20 to 30 years of deploying troops all over this world. My question is, how many veterans who have made a PACT Act claim that was granted are actively receiving care on a regular basis that's going to help them live a better life? Of course, what everyone always talks about is the monetary compensation, the disability payments. And to the best of my knowledge, they're getting most of that right, which is great. But how can we ensure that our veterans are getting a good quality of care at VA facilities? Recently on the Richard Leonard Show, we talked about how VA care facilities are extremely understaffed. They're broken, they're dirty, and there's just not enough personnel to keep them operating at a level that seems like it would be acceptable. Acceptable facilities for the men and women that chose to support the idea of the American dream. For the people that didn't want to or couldn't serve. And so that's really it. That's all that I was able to gather that he had to say about our community, the veteran community. He failed to mention the fact that recruitment is at an all-time low. Retention in the military is at an all-time low. He failed to mention that there's talks all over this country about granting illegal immigrants the ability to serve in the military as a path to expedited citizenship. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a disaster waiting to happen to me. The idea that young Americans do not see a value in serving in the military and protecting our land to ensure that this proverbial blanket of freedom that we all rest under every night is protected and stays intact. He didn't say anything about that. My question is, who's going to? Recently on the Richard Leonard Show, we spoke about the idea that now, after fighting the longest war in our country's history, 20-something years, we have thrusted an unprecedented amount of veterans into our communities. After all, 22 or 23, however many years it was, that creates a lot of veterans. And those of us that were lucky enough to walk off a plane and come home, we're not getting the care that was earned for many. Now I'll say that there are a large amount of veterans who get what they need and they're able to survive and to live out their days, maybe comfortable, maybe not. But I don't know that that's equal across the board. And the reason I say that is because we hear politicians all the time talk about how every veteran, everyone, should be well taken care of. We should celebrate the sacrifice that these men and women made to this country. It doesn't happen across the board. You see, we know that veterans struggle from all kinds of different issues. We lose a crazy amount of veterans daily to suicide. Many veterans all across this land have significant mental health issues from the things maybe they saw or they went through, or the perception of what they saw and went through, whatever the case may be. They have issues. Chemical dependency and addiction issues are a huge thing. Homelessness is a huge thing. And although it is imperative that both sides are engaged, meaning if I go into somewhere with a problem to an organization that wants to help me because I'm a veteran with whatever my problem is, if I'm not engaged, then they can't help me. And that's my decision. But I'd be willing to bet if there was research done to find out how many choose to just not do anything, I believe that number would be small. Because after all, one of the selling points, at least when I joined, was that you'll be taken care of. If you need medical care, there'll be medical care available to you. Things like that. Recruitment issues are a huge thing. Does our president not see a problem with the idea that young Americans all across this country don't really see a whole lot of value in joining the military? Does our president think it's a problem that many Americans, not just young Americans in this country, see that our flag, our symbol, stands for hate and oppression, racism, whatever else you want to label it? And I would say this: if you are one of those people that sees the United States of America flag as a symbol of hate and oppression, find a flag you agree with and go there. Nobody's stopping you. Nobody's begging you to stay. In my opinion, it's kind of like why you choose one make of vehicle over the other. If you don't like Fords, buy a Chevy. If you don't like Fords and Chevys, buy a Dodge. Seems pretty simple to me. If you don't like it here, and the symbol of this country that is supposed to stand for freedom and good, great things, then go find a place that does. But I'll tell you what, for a large amount, I would say majority of the people that have or do serve in a uniform in this country, the flag is still a symbol of hope. It's a symbol of something good. And also, it's a symbol of what it took for us to have what we have. When I look at the flag, it makes me proud to know that the men and women that came before me sacrificed everything. Sacrificed everything. When I look at the flag, it doesn't make me think about the atrocities that have happened in this country. Now, I'm first to admit, as a country, throughout our history, we've made some mistakes. We've done some ridiculously evil things. But the flag reminds me that even through all of that, this country was able to persevere. Were we necessarily able to right all the wrongs that we've committed? Probably not. But it stands as a reminder to not repeat history. The negative parts of history, anyway. The same thing with tearing down monuments. Are there statues in places of this country of people that weren't such great people? Yeah, probably. Do we need to put on protests and destroy cities and destroy those things? No. Those things are reminders of times in our history that either we don't want to repeat and shouldn't repeat, or things that are good to remember. Foundation that this country stands on. We didn't hear any of that from Joe Biden. Some of that maybe is not appropriate for the State of the Union, but I am here to say that in my humble opinion, Mr. President, the state of our union is not strong. Our backyard is dirty as hell. And before we assist others in cleaning up their backyard, why don't we clean up our own? And in doing that, why don't we take care of the people, the men and women that have chose to sacrifice everything if they had to ensure that this country is strong. I guess I don't see it any other way. It's black and white to me. I've been told many times by different people that life isn't just black and white. There's gray areas. Well, for some things, there is no gray area. For some things, it's just black and white. Every action has a reaction. And there isn't always 4 reactions that are possible for one action, if that makes sense. I'm starting to confuse myself now. But I went all the way around the block to go across the street to say the state of our union is not strong. And as it pertains to this platform, the state of our union is dirty. Veterans and members of the military are not well taken care of. The men and women who serve this country or have served this country have earned better. So the question is, what are we going to do? Well, recently on the Richard Leonard Show, we've spoke about the percentage of the population that has wore a uniform. Did you know that veterans make up almost 9% of our country's population? Which means to me that we have the ability to sway an election if we need to. It tells me that we will or need to be heard now. I think in the past, when the percentage of our population that were veterans was very small and to many people not very important, we could be screaming from the mountaintops and not much is going to change. Now I feel like they got to listen to us. Now is the time for the men and women that have served this country to be heard. But we won't be heard if we're not screaming from the mountaintops, if we're not talking about it. That's how, in my opinion, we strengthen the state of our union. The population of people that chose to serve this country and protect this proverbial blanket of freedom that we all rest under at night, that group of people deserves to be heard. They've earned the right to be heard. And now, the way they vote, assuming that elections are going to be free and fair, that population of people has a lot more power now than they ever have. We have a lot more power than we ever have in this country's history, in my opinion. So I urge you, if you are a veteran or you are a member of the military or know somebody who is, talk about these things. Pick out the things that are important to you and start talking about them. Talk about them at work. Talk about them at the dinner table. Talk about them at the bar when you're having a beer. And I'm not saying launch full-blown political conversations. But talk about the idea that there's more of us than there ever has been. And now we have to be heard. If we do it right. But the first step is to just even talk about it. Again, the state of our union is not strong. But we can make it strong again. And I want to just point out, that's not an advertisement for Trump. That just came to me. We can make it strong again. Why can't we? A lot of people are going to say that there's a lot of powers working against us. And maybe that's true. But if we don't start opening our mouths and then following that up with action, do something. Do something for your neighbor. Do something for other veterans in your community. Even if it's just gathering at the park to have a barbecue. I don't know, whatever that looks like to you. Do something. Get involved. Because the state of our union depends on it.